And we begin with breaking news out of Chicago, where authorities have just released video of a police officer shooting a black teenager to death last October. Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times, at least twice in the back. Today, Officer Jason Van Dyke was charged with first-degree murder. Al Jazeera's Andy Rosejan is live for us in Chicago with more. Andy.
And Tony, there are a few reasons why the police department and the mayor do not think that any protest that might come out today or tomorrow would be that bad. And here are a couple of reasons. First of all, the videotape, which has been described as very chilling, very graphic, is going to be treated by a lot of media outlets. In other words, it'll be covered and the most violent parts of it won't be shown. That's part of the good news why the police department thinks this won't be as much of a big protest as it might have otherwise be. Also, there was, of course, a first-degree murder charge today against the man, the police officer, accused of shooting 17-year-old Laquan McDonald in October of 2014. Now, the police department, though, says, despite all that, despite the fact that the murder charge was handed down today, they are, of course, taking precautions. And here's the Chief Superintendent, Gary McCarthy.
People have a right to be angry. People have a right to protest. People have a right to free speech, but they do not have a right to commit criminal acts. And at the end of the day, the Chicago Police Department is trained for it, and we're one of the world leaders in mass demonstrations. We're prepared to facilitate people's First Amendment right to free speech, but we will be intolerant of criminal behavior.
Officer Van Dyke is accused of shooting 17-year-old Laquan McDonald in October of 2014, 16 times, while other officers stood around and did no shots at all. And the accusation is that this young man had been slashing tires with a 3-inch knife. He, in fact, slashed a tire of a police vehicle. But by all accounts, and in the video, apparently it shows that he was walking away at the time of the shooting, and most importantly, according to prosecutors, he was not lunging or doing anything threatening towards Officer Van Dyke. So Van Dyke was charged today with first-degree murder. The family of Laquan McDonald put out a statement today just urging calm in all this. They said that let's keep his legacy better than that of any protests that get out of control, and Mayor Rahm Emanuel here echoed that as well.
We need, as a city, to get to a point where young men in our community and in parts of our city see an officer and don't just see an officer with a uniform and a badge, but they see him as a partner in helping them reach their full potential. But we also have to get to a place as a city where officers who patrol communities in our city see a young man not as a potential problem and a risk, but they also see in that young man as an individual who is worthy of their protection and their potential.
The police department insists here in Chicago that they put in things into place, policies into place, to reduce the number of police-involved shootings by 70% in the last 4 years. Of course, a lot of critics aren't buying it, and what a lot of critics aren't buying as well is why was this officer charged just minutes, hours before the release of the tape. Cynically, people are saying, well, it's because that once the tape came out, all these riots would happen and they wanted to prevent that. Well, the prosecutor, the chief prosecutor in this case, admits, yes, that they did not plan to charge this officer with murder so quickly. They had planned to charge him eventually. They say certainly releasing this tape now pushed up their timeline, but they insist, Tony, that they did not charge this officer with first-degree murder just because of the videotape or because of the protests that might come out of it.
Okay, Andy, a couple of questions if I can. Both police and the victim's family have opposed releasing the video. I wonder, is it too early yet to ask this? I understand maybe at this point just the local Chicago channels have the video, have been able to download it. Any sense of a reaction so far?
Not really that we're getting, Tony. Everyone's kind of waiting. In fact, the file that they've been releasing the video on, the computer file, has been difficult for a lot of people to call up. And a lot of the media here are choosing not to show the whole thing, to show it either treated, in other words, covered up, the worst parts of it, the most graphic parts of it, or just to show 12 seconds before the shooting starts. So the police department and the city are thinking that's maybe helping, possibly, to keep things a little bit calmer, possibly.
What's the next step for the officer? I suppose he now is as a part of the system. He goes through the process now, right? Officer Van Dyke.
Yes. held on first-degree murder charges with no bond. He has another hearing on Monday where they're going to look at the tape in court to determine whether he will continue to be held up on bond. We assume that will be the case. The judge eventually in this case could reduce his murder charge. He will likely be going in front of a judge to plead his case. He is an officer, 15 years on the force with a wife and 2 children. But the next step for him obviously is just sitting here in jail, and the next step for protesters is deciding what they want to do. Their main concern, Tony, is not so much now that he has the murder charge against him. That's what they wanted. What they really want now is for Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy, who you heard from there, to be booted out of his job. That's what protesters want next.
Okay, Andy. Andy Roaston for us following the situation in Chicago. Andy, appreciate it. Thank you. Toria Hamilton is a civil rights attorney, pardon me, and she joins us from Chicago. Look, Tori, I don't live in that city. You do. I want you to describe the last few days and what they felt like for you in the lead up to the release of this video.
The entire Chicagoland population is watching the news. It's a very important issue for everybody that lives here, and I think everybody's glued to their televisions or their computer screens watching what's happening.
You are a civil rights attorney. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts on this are, I think that, you know, of course, nobody in the city would like to see any sort of violence or protest occur as a result of the release of this video. But I do think
well, wait a minute, Tori,
yes.
Protests are fine, right? You know one wants violence, but
yes.
Protests are fine. Okay.
Correct. Protests actually, I think, are warranted, because I think the question that we need to ask is, if the state's attorney's office or the prosecutors had this video, which I've heard is ever since the day after this occurred, and let's say this video involved a civilian-on-civilian shooting, exactly the same facts, but not a police officer. And in my experience, 20 years, both as a prosecutor, a city attorney, and now as a plaintiff civil rights attorney, that civilian would have been charged with murder immediately, not a year later, and that person probably would already be serving a prison term.
So what's going on here, Tori? Help me understand. Is it Chicago? I don't think it's just Chicago. So what's going on here?
Well, I think that there is a long-standing history of a reluctance of prosecutors to charge police officers with crimes. I do wonder whether there would have been charges without the release of this video.
So, Tori, can I stop you there?
Yes.
I was scribbling a note here, and my note, I'll just read it to you. Would we be here without the video? Will we be here?
Absolutely
meaning,
not.
Would we be here with a first-degree murder charge without the video? And you're saying absolutely not?
I am. In my experience, without this video, I do not think we would be here. No.
Why? Why do you say that? There were what, at least 4 other officers around, and what you're suggesting to me is that those officers would have given similar accounts and would have protected Officer Van Dyke. Is that what you're saying to me?
I wish that I wasn't saying that to you, but yes, that's been my experience. And I do want to bring, I don't know if anybody's reporting on this, but do you know, Tony, that Officer Van Dyke in 2009, in almost exactly 5 years to the day, a jury found that Officer Van Dyke had committed excessive force against another black man and awarded a $350,000 verdict against Van Dyke and his partner for this excessive force case.
I learned that about 10 minutes ago. So Tori, I don't know, can you see me? Is there a monitor where you are where you can see me? Because I'm about to roll the video.
See you.
You can't?
But I actually just saw it moments before we began speaking in the studio here. I watched it just once, but I did see it.
All right, so we're going to roll it for everyone who's watching us now, and then I want your reaction to it. All right? I'm going to roll it, and everyone knows at this point that it's graphic. We explained that top to bottom. So it is graphic. We're going to roll the video, and then I want your thoughts on it, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. And there he is. He's hit there. He's walking past the officers, but walking on an angle where he's moving away from the officers.
Yes.
All right, so Tori, you've seen it. What are your thoughts?
Well, the version, I'm not sure what version that you've played. The version that first there was a version being
I
shown
think there may
here
be 6 seconds, maybe 7 seconds. We play it up to the point where the young man is hit by the first shot. Okay.
Well, what it appears to me is happening in the video is, yes, he is not in anywhere near another person that he could use the knife against.
He's certainly not moving toward the officers, and he's certainly not at that moment threatening an officer.
Yes, and I believe that he is actually angling away from the police officers.
Away, yes.
Yes, that's what it appears to me. It also appeared to me, and I did just watch it once, but it appeared to me that if you see he's spun around, it appears that perhaps he's spun around by being shot, and then he falls to the ground. Yeah. And the version that I saw continues on, in which you can actually see smoke emanating from his body as he's laying on the ground and he's being shot multiple times. It's difficult to watch.
So, what words? I've heard the word execution. I don't know if that's too strong. I don't know. I haven't seen the entire video without it being edited. How would you describe what you saw? What would you describe it as?
I think that it's rightfully charged as first-degree murder, from what I can see here. Yeah. On this video that I just watched. I have some questions about why it has taken a year to charge this police officer, and I have some questions for why or what consequences this police officer suffered just 5 years before he killed Laquan McDonald, when he was found by a jury to have committed excessive force against another black man.
So let me ask a quick question here. How much, to the gallery, how much time do we have on the window with Tori? 3 minutes. All right, 2 minutes. Okay, last question for you, Tori. I'm sitting here and I'm watching the bit that I've seen, and I'll watch the entire tape at some point here. When I view what I just saw and listen to the words back in my head from the mayor talking about Chicago coming to a day where a black man sees an officer as a partner in reaching his full potential, that sounds a little silly to me.
Yeah, I think it sounds a little silly, but I think the sentiment is good, but the only way that we're ever going to get there is if this city changes the way it holds the bad apple police officers accountable. There is no reason it should have taken a year while Jason Van Dyke sat at a desk collecting a paycheck that is paid by the city of Chicago taxpayers.
Oh my.
We need to deal with the bad apples better, and we have an absolutely broken police accountability system in this city that needs to be fixed.
All right, Tori. Glad to have you on the program. Yeah, glad to have you on this program. Tori Hamilton is a civil rights attorney out of Chicago. Let's take a break. We're back with more of the day's news right after this.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.